again, it's time for another month of reading recap. So I'm going to talk about what I read in March and how I liked what I read. So let's get to it and pass more books. I was looking through my Storygraph stats, and I was thinking that I hadn't read very much this month, and I was surprised. I was like, oh, I forgot some of the books that I read. I just feel like by the end of the month I was kind of feeling rushed, like I didn't have enough time to read or something, I guess. I don't know. So I thought I read less than I did, but I read actually quite a good amount. So at the beginning of the month, I finished what is out so far of the Secret Life of Mary Bennet series. The third book in that series so far is called The Lady's Guide to Death and Deception. And if you remember from my past wrap up, I read the first two books and really, really enjoyed them. But this third book really disappointed me. And it was kind of heartbreaking in a way. Because I'd come to expect so much of these books and I'd enjoyed them so much. It felt like everything really took a step down. Like the writing wasn't nearly as good, the editing wasn't nearly as clean, the characterization felt so stretched far beyond what things should be. It started to feel a lot like a lot of those typical Regency romances that you find that I really, really struggle with and have a hard time with, because I feel like most of those Regency romance books, it just feels like a contemporary romance playing dress up, and they are like really ignoring a lot of the culture and propriety of the time and things that make it a Regency era book. And so like I remember reading the first chapter and going like, what did I just read? Like it was definitely like, if you kind of check out the context of like the time period, it was really entertaining and kind of like dramatic, you know? But when you put into context that this is Mary Bennet we're talking about, I'm like, she wouldn't do that. No, you cannot convince me. And I feel like we could have gotten there if there had been just a little bit more time and care put into how long she's been a spy by this point and just how much her perspective has changed. Or if we could have even just, I think this is going to end up being, this could potentially be a fairly long series. We could have like a good number of books. If we could have just had one more book before this one where Mary was able to step even a little bit more outside of her comfort zone before taking this next really, really big step, I think that would have really, really helped. And I was really hoping that the main relationship in this book would actually be drawn out over even just a little bit longer, over another book. And it wasn't. Things just really, really escalated quickly and just kept chugging right along. And in a sense, it was nice because I do really like that couple, that pairing, but I needed it to take more time. I really did. So I was overall really disappointed. Although I will say that I loved the setting of this book and I really felt immersed in, again, the setting and the history. So again, the research that goes into these books is like spot on. So there's that. The next book that I finished in March, which is The Small and the Mighty by Sharon McMahon. I remember saying last month that I was taking a surprisingly long time to get through this book, and I was surprisingly disappointed in like the beginning of how it was going. I've followed Sharon on Instagram for years, and I have always really thought she is a strong writer, and I still think she's a strong writer, but I'm a little surprised at how some decisions were made by her editors, it seems like. I mean, maybe she just put her foot down on some things, but I'm still a little bit surprised that she didn't listen to maybe some things from her editors better, if that's the case. I'm especially surprised at the organization of this book, because the organization makes very little sense to me. I mean, there's some sense to it, but like I remember even when I first opened this book and was looking at the table of contents, and I was, because the cover says there's 12 unsung Americans, and I was trying to count the 12 individuals just based off the table of contents, and I could not figure out who the 12 people were. Like, yes, things are kind of broken out by topic or principle, but it still feels like some things were out of order that did not need to be out of order. Okay, here's another thing. So my favorite stories were in the like second to last section, Go for Broke. That was about some Japanese immigrants who lived in Hawaii and who eventually in World War II got put into these like concentration camps just for being of Japanese descent, and how unjust that was, and how they, pushed forward anyway, and just some really incredible things that these people did despite the hardships that they went through. And it was really inspiring and really well written, and that part like was so like the most gripping of everything for me. And still, this principle, Go for Broke, I felt like it got such little attention and such little discussion. I didn't really understand, like I don't know, I felt like I needed more discussion of what going for broke means. And like, but all the other sections, I feel like the discussion was a little bit more there, but not in that one section where I felt like the stories were the best. So I just, it was a little bit of a mixed bag for me, unfortunately. I think the thing that throws me off is that the subtitle promises so much, and there's so much in this book that doesn't meet those expectations. Like, so many times Sharon points out, and there's this whole group of people who pitched in so much, and if they hadn't given their 50 cents, or if they hadn't given their 5 hours that day, or whatever they did, their little bit that they could give, if they hadn't done that, like this bigger thing wouldn't have come to pass. And she points that out at least 2 times that I can remember in this book, that there were these groups of many individuals who gave a little bit, and that made the difference. And it feels like they are still a bit of an afterthought, because this book is about 12 individuals and not like hundreds of unsung Americans who made a difference, So I feel like the subtitle really could have set expectations so much better. And I think that's what's throwing me off so much about this book, is that I really came in with like a certain perception of what I was going to be getting from these stories. And then I keep getting these like kind of curveballs and things that I'm like, oh, okay. And now we're going into your soapbox about this political idea, which, I mean, you can make your argument, but just there were things like that just kept like tripping me up just a little bit. So overall, yes, very inspiring, well researched, well written, but so many things organizationally and discussion wise and expectation wise kept throwing me off and catching me up. So I kind of wish somehow I could get in the head of her and her editor and see where it started and how much progress it made before it became this. And I don't know. Oh man, when you're an editor and you look at things differently, it's fine. It was still really good, and I'm glad I have it, and I'm really happy for Sharon and her success in sharing these stories, because I do think these stories deserve to be told, and they were great. It just wasn't life-changing like I was hoping it would be. Next, I read a nonfiction book that I just don't really care to talk about. I don't read nonfiction that often, and I don't really love talking about it, so we're just going to move on. Next, I finally finished Michael Crichton's State of Fear. It took me so long to get through this audiobook. I mean, not just because it's long, because it is long, but also sometimes I just did not want to go back to it. Mostly because, well, here's the thing. I came to this book wanting to read it because my dad had suggested I read it for the themes, for the discussion that it can spark, which I think it does a very good job of sparking discussions about fear, and how people in power tend to use fear as a way to control others and to stay in power. And I think that's a very good conversation to have, and to try to understand how to actually find information about things that you care about, how to get educated, how to actually make a difference about like agendas that you care about, and how to not be brainwashed about by a certain political party, or to just there's some care we can take into getting informed about the things that we care about, and learning how to actually make a good difference with those things that we care about. And so I think in that way it was definitely fascinating, and I was there to hear those discussions. The characters, I feel like, were a little bit flat overall, and it was also a little bit of like an unbelievably paced action kind of story. It's just we kept like flying to Antarctica and having this adventure and almost dying, and then flying back to the US. And then suddenly we flew to South America, or I don't know if it was South America, I don't know. Suddenly we flew to France, or suddenly we flew, they were just like flying to somewhere and then coming back to the US to like catch a breath, but it wasn't a long enough breath. And then suddenly they flew somewhere else and then like, came back to the US, or maybe they flew somewhere specific in the US, but it was still somewhere where they like almost died. And it was just a lot, a lot of that happening where I was like, okay, I think I understand why you want this to be such a fast-paced action thing, but there's just a little too, like, I don't think you can dive back into travel so fast after, getting struck by lightning 3 times. Or maybe that's an exaggeration, but like some of that stuff just felt a little bit exaggerated to me. There was also a point near the end where there's a cannibalistic scene that was horrifying. And it's not super long, it's a little graphic, but I remember like stopping the audiobook after that and being like, I did not need that in my life. I didn't need that scene in my life. Oh, it was, but I think that at the same time, I feel like things are still pretty well written, and like that scene especially was written very, very well, where it was horrifying, and it was meant to be horrifying, and it was meant to really raise the stakes of the situation and make you like hope and pray that the other characters will get out alive, so it all kind of like made sense why it was done. The particular characters and the particular action just weren't quite my cup of tea. Just the pacing didn't quite jive with me, and I kept like putting it down for a really long time, then picking it back up. And anyway, but I also really, really appreciated the author's note at the end where he talks specifically about, okay, so here are my actual views about environmentalism, what I think we should do and should focus on, and here are my thoughts about fear being used as a control mechanism. And I really did appreciate that discussion. And I think it is like something important to think of. I've been thinking a lot about my own tendencies toward fear and anxiety, and how I can not push them away and ignore them, but not let them control me either, right? And anyway, so I appreciated that message from the book for me. Another audiobook that I read and actually got through a lot faster is Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno Garcia. And I overall had a really good time with this book. It's my first book by her, and I'd heard her name for a while and had been really interested, partly because I know that she tends to use very different cultures than what I'm used to. So this book takes place in the 20s, like the jazz age, and we're in Mexico. We've got this girl who is sort of a Cinderella figure, right? I mean, that's a kind of a surface level way to describe her. She definitely has a very independent and rebellious kind of streak to her. Cassiopeia, that's her name. Anyway, she accidentally wakes up this god who has been dead for almost 100, for decades, really, not 100 years. But he's very angry at his brother, who is also a god, who killed him, really put him to sleep. And he's like, okay, we are going to go get vengeance on my brother. Like, you're now my servant because you are keeping me alive, because I have some essences of myself that are still floating out there that I have to go and collect, and we're going to go collect them and then go confront my brother. And it's very set up in a very kind of formulaic way where you can see, okay, they have to get this thing and then this thing and then this thing, and she's tethered to him by this bone shard, and it's all like you can really see how the story is going to play out, and I think it helps set the pacing for it pretty well overall. Oh, and I think I forgot to mention that like these gods are based on like the ancient Mayan gods. So I think that's really fun and so fascinating to hear those stories and start to become a little bit more familiar with that that history and culture. It's a little bit of a formulaic plot, but what's actually so great about this book is that the ending is so bittersweet. It's like you can kind of make your predictions of what you think should happen, or depending on what kind of reader you are, it's like you want them to end up together, or you don't, or you hope it'll go this way or that way. But like the way it ends up, it feels less predictable, I think, and the ending is just so bittersweet. And I think it just strikes that balance so well. And I feel like it's hard to find stories that really do that so well, that really have the perfect balance of, we won something, but we also lost something. And actually making space for those and not saying we lost something, just kidding, it's actually all okay. Like that happens a lot in stories, I feel like. So I really thought the ending was so satisfying in that way, and it's something that I wanted to keep thinking about because it was that little bit of bitter with the sweetness. I also want to say so highly of this book that the prose, the writing style is just beautiful, and it sings. It's beautiful. It's the next time I have to point somebody to an example of third person omniscient that is done well, I'm gonna say this book. You see people's, like, what they're thinking in their heads, but you still, like, you're not, like, it doesn't feel like you're constantly bouncing around. And then the language is just so beautiful. You can tell there's like a specific narrator who like has this voice, and it's really, really good. I will say there were a few moments where I was like, I didn't need this person's experience right here. That was really repetitive, or we could have just kept it a little bit shorter. There were a few moments kind of like that, mostly with the cousin, Martine. But it's fine. Overall, it was just so beautifully written, and if you don't mind a somewhat formulaic plot, especially if you are like ready for just the ending to just take you where it takes you, I think it's worth the read. And last but not least, I reread Tress of the Emerald Sea, and I have been waiting for this reread for so long, and I'm so glad that my book club finally decided to read this book this month, because I have been needing to read it for the second time for like years. Okay, maybe not years, because it's only been out for like just over a year, really. Okay. Anyway, when Trust of the Emerald Sea first came out, I was one of those Kickstarter backers who ordered the hard copies and didn't get it for a few months because they just took a long time to print because they are so pretty. I read the ebook on my phone, and that was good. It was really good. I loved it. Oh my goodness, I had such a fun time reading it. But as soon as I like saw some of the art, and once I got it like physically in person, I was like, I need to reread this holding the actual book in my hands, because it is just so beautiful. You probably already know, but it's a beautiful book, just like the art and the everything. It's beautiful. But I've got to say, when I was getting ready to read this book, I was slightly nervous because I was worried that I just wouldn't enjoy it quite as much as I had the first time, because something about that first time just felt so magical, and I couldn't explain it. I just kept thinking, this is the book that I just needed at this particular time. And so I was like, I guess this is just the book that I wanted, January of 2023. And I'm so happy to say that reading it this time, I loved it even more than the first time. I really did. I had such a good time with it. And I specifically remember a couple of moments during the first read that almost felt a little bit too cheesy or on the nose or something like that. And they didn't feel that way this time. They felt like, yes, I'm here to hear Hoyd tell his story. Okay, the only thing that I will say, I did kind of roll my eyes a bit at like the poop jokes, I just don't find those funny. They're kind of annoying. Like, they're just not interesting, like, if you're gonna make a joke about something, find something interesting to be funny about. But anyway, that's basically the only thing that I could say I was like not really there for it. But everything else, man, I just had the best time reliving the story and enjoying the characters and having all the like the philosophical discussions that turn into, just Hoydisms. Anyway, it was just so fun. I loved having the chance to reread this. It kind of felt like coming back home, honestly. And I hope I can reread this again another day when I'm just needing to disappear into a great story. I just had the best time reading it. So that's what I read in March, and I'm excited to get on to my April reads. It's going to be so good, and I'm excited to pass more books. So, see ya.